What happens when one of Britain's most treasured actors steps onto a cheerful morning talk show, expecting friendly chatter, only to be met with a host who seems more eager to spark controversy than share a warm conversation? In less than 40 seconds, a single cutting remark about working-class roots would rip through the studio like a lightning bolt, exposing the entitled streak hiding beneath Lorraine Kelly's polished smile and setting the stage for one of the most jaw-dropping walkouts daytime TV has ever seen. The morning began like any other inside ITV's glossy studios. Michael Caine, yes, the Michael Caine, the legendary star with that unmistakable Cockney voice and fierce pride in his working-class beginnings, had agreed to appear on Lorraine Kelly's popular show to promote his latest film. At 89, he had nothing left to prove. From the gritty streets of London's East End to the glitter of Hollywood, he'd lived a life most actors could only dream of. Settling into the bright studio chair, he expected the usual easy banter, the kind of light entertainment morning viewers adore. Across from him, Lorraine greeted the cameras with her trademark sparkle. "Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by the wonderful Michael Caine, who needs no introduction." Her voice sang with practiced charm as she turned toward him. "Now, Michael, you've had such an incredible career spanning over 60 years. Tell me, what keeps you motivated at this stage of your life?" Caine leaned forward, eyes glowing with the passion that had carried him through decades of cinema. "Well, Lorraine, it's the same thing that's always driven me. I come from very humble beginnings in South London, and I never forget where I came from. Every role I take, every project I choose, is about telling stories that matter to ordinary people. That's what keeps me going." Lorraine nodded, but a flicker in her expression hinted at something sharper. Yes, your background is quite well documented, isn't it? The whole rags to riches story. But surely now, with all your success, you must feel quite removed from those early days?" The question landed like a pebble in still water, small but with ripples that reached every corner of the studio. Caine straightened, his legendary calm unshaken. "I wouldn't say removed, no. If anything, success has made me more appreciative of where I started. When you've known real poverty, real struggle, you don't forget it. It shapes everything about who you are." Lorraine's smile tightened. "Oh, come now, Michael. Surely that's a bit theatrical. You've been living in luxury for decades, multi-million-pound homes, private jets, mingling with the elite. Don't you think clinging to this working-class image is a bit disingenuous?" The studio air seemed to freeze. Even the camera operators sensed the shift. Caine's jaw set, but his voice remained cool and precise. "I'm not clinging to anything, Lorraine. I'm simply being honest about my experiences. Success doesn't erase your past, and it shouldn't. Growing up poor, watching my mother struggle to put food on the table, those moments shaped me. They made me who I am." Lorraine leaned back, crossing her legs with a casualness that somehow felt dismissive. "But don't you think your audience might find it a little tiresome? This constant reference to your humble beginnings. I mean, how long can you really play that card?" The words cut like glass. Caine's eyes hardened, his famous voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "Play that card," he repeated slowly. "Is that what you think I'm doing?" Yet Lorraine pressed on, seemingly unaware of the storm she was stirring. "Let's be honest. Every interview you give, every appearance, it's always the same story. Poor boy from London makes good. Don't you think it's time to move beyond that narrative? Your fans might appreciate a bit more authenticity." The irony hung heavy in the air. She was questioning authenticity while displaying none herself. Caine sat motionless, weighing her words and the casual cruelty behind them. Finally, he spoke, each syllable carrying the weight of nearly 9 decades of hard-won wisdom. "Authenticity? You want to talk about authenticity, Lorraine? Authenticity is remembering the woman who raised you when everyone else had given up. Authenticity is never forgetting the people who believed in you when you had nothing. Authenticity is staying true to your values, even when you're sitting in a television studio being told that your life story is tiresome." For the first time, Lorraine's polished smile wavered. Still, she forced the conversation forward. "Oh, I'm not saying your story isn't inspiring, Michael. I'm just suggesting that perhaps your audience would enjoy hearing more about your current lifestyle, your recent successes, rather than dwelling on the past. After all, that was a very long time ago. A very long." Caine's eyes stayed fixed on her, the faintest flicker of disbelief crossing his face. The audience at home could almost feel the tension thickening through their screens. He inhaled slowly, as though weighing every word against a lifetime of memories. "A very long time ago," he repeated, his voice carrying a quiet steel. "The past may be distant in years, Lorraine, but it lives in every choice I make, I wouldn't trade those beginnings for anything. For a heartbeat, the studio fell into a charged silence. You could hear the faint hum of the cameras, the shuffle of a crew member's shoes as even they hesitated to move. Lorraine, sensing she had poked a sleeping giant, gave a light laugh that sounded just a little too rehearsed. "Oh, Michael, don't take it the wrong way," she said, waving a manicured hand as if to brush away the weight of her own words. "I only mean people might like to see a different side of you." Caine tilted his head, the corner of his mouth twitching with something between a smirk and a warning. "Different side?" he echoed. "I've shown every side there, Island. I've been the struggling actor. I've been the success story. I've been the man who buried friends before their time and celebrated victories I never dreamed of. That's life. It doesn't erase where you started." Lorraine pressed on, refusing to let the conversation settle. "But surely, after so many decades of fame, the struggle feels distant, almost like another lifetime?" Her tone was light, but the words landed like tiny darts. Michael leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "The distance doesn't change the truth. You don't forget cold winters when you had nothing to eat. You don't forget the sound of your mother counting coins to pay the rent. That stays with you forever, and it should." Another silence, this one heavier. Viewers on social media would later say it felt as if the entire studio was holding its breath. Even the warm morning lights seemed to dim under the weight of his words. Lorraine's smile returned, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well," she said briskly, glancing toward the cameras, "let's talk about this new film of yours. It's already creating quite the buzz." But Michael wasn't ready to let her pivot so easily. "Lorraine," he interrupted gently, his voice low but commanding, "it's fascinating to me that success is often treated as an excuse to forget where you came from. Almost as if comfort gives you permission to rewrite history. But I won't. I won't pretend I was born into privilege when I wasn't. That's not a narrative, that's my life." A faint cough came from somewhere behind the cameras, the kind of nervous sound people make when they sense a storm brewing. Lorraine straightened in her chair, clasping her cue cards a little tighter. "Of course," she said quickly, "I didn't mean to imply otherwise. It's just that sometimes, viewers," Caine cut in smoothly, "respect honesty more than anything. And honesty means remembering the road that brought you here." Her cheeks flushed, barely visible beneath the makeup but noticeable enough to anyone watching closely. She shifted in her seat, the confident posture slipping just enough to reveal the crack in her composure. Trying to recover, Lorraine forced a laugh. "Well, I suppose that's one way to look at it." Michael's reply came like a hammer wrapped in silk. "It's not just one way, it's the only way, if you want to live without pretending." A stunned hush swept through the studio. Even the live audience, usually quick to giggle or applaud, sat frozen, eyes darting between the seasoned actor and the morning host, who suddenly looked far less in control. Lorraine attempted another smile, but it trembled. "Shall we move on to the film?" she asked, the question almost a plea. Michael leaned back slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. "By all means," he said, each word measured, "let's move on." But the air around them refused to lighten. It carried the weight of a man who had just reclaimed his story in front of millions. The cameras captured every second, the forced grin on Lorraine's face, the quiet fire in Caine's eyes, the unspoken understanding that this interview had veered far beyond the safe territory of movie promotion. Viewers would replay the moment for days, analyzing every glance, every pause, every razor-sharp exchange. Backstage, producers exchanged frantic looks. The segment was running long, but no one dared cut it short. This was live television gold, the kind of unscripted confrontation that trends within minutes. And Michael? He remained perfectly composed, as if daring anyone to challenge the truth of his words. Each second, he sat there, calm and unflinching, felt like a victory over the very idea that success requires surrendering your past. Lorraine finally cleared her throat, her voice slightly thinner than before. "Your new film," she began again, "has been described as one of your most personal projects yet. Tell us." Michael allowed a small, knowing smile. "It's about resilience," he said softly, "and the power of remembering where you come from. Something, I believe, we've just demonstrated quite well." The crew stifled nervous chuckles. Lorraine forced another bright grin, but the battle of wills was already etched into morning show history. Viewers flooded social media with instant reactions. "Did Michael Caine just school Lorraine Kelly on live TV?" one user posted. Another wrote, "That's how you defend your roots, classy but brutal." Clips of the tense exchange began circulating before the show even cut to commercial. And yet, through it all, Michael remained the picture of grace-proof, that a quiet, unwavering defense of one's truth can be more explosive than any outburst. The studio lights shimmered, but the atmosphere never fully recovered. What was meant to be a routine interview had transformed into a masterclass in dignity, leaving millions talking long after the broadcast ended. Backstage chaos rippled through the control room as the segment wrapped. Producers whispered furiously into headsets, debating whether to cut to a commercial early, but no one wanted to interrupt a live moment already setting social media on fire. Camera operators exchanged wide-eyed looks, while floor managers tried to keep the show moving without signaling panic. Michael Caine, however, looked completely unfazed. He sat back in his chair with the poise of a man who had weathered decades of Hollywood storms. Not a bead of sweat on his brow, not a single twitch of discomfort, only a calm authority that made the silence around him feel deafening. Lorraine shuffled her cue cards, her fingers betraying a slight tremor. She forced a bright laugh that rang hollow beneath the studio lights. "Well, Michael," she said, her voice pitched a little higher than before, "you certainly know how to keep a conversation interesting." Caine tilted his head, offering the faintest of smiles. "Life's more interesting when you tell the truth," he replied evenly, a remark that landed like a velvet-covered dagger. The audience, both in the studio and at home, could practically hear the subtext echoing, "Truth, not performance, is what commands respect." Twitter exploded within minutes. Clips of the exchange flooded feeds with captions like, "Michael Caine schooling Lorraine live," and "Masterclass in grace and grit." Lorraine tried to pivot once more, eager to regain her footing. "Now, about this film of yours," she began, "it's generating Oscar buzz already. That must feel extraordinary after all these years." Michael gave a polite nod. "Awards come and go," he said softly, "but the stories we tell, the ones that reflect real lives, those last forever." His gaze held hers for a beat, longer than necessary, a silent reminder of the conversation that had just unfolded. The studio audience erupted in polite applause, but the energy felt different now, less like morning chatter and more like the aftermath of a courtroom verdict. Viewers at home weren't just watching an interview, they were witnessing a live reckoning between celebrity polish and unshakable authenticity. Lorraine pressed on, her tone cheerful, but her eyes betraying a flicker of unease. "Your dedication is remarkable," she offered, "but surely at this stage, you could simply relax and enjoy the rewards of your success?" Michael's answer came with quiet precision. "Relaxation is a gift," he said, "but purpose is a calling, and purpose doesn't retire." The words hung in the air like a challenge wrapped in wisdom. Even the seasoned host seemed momentarily lost for a response. Producers finally signaled for a commercial break, the red tally light flashing as the broadcast cut to an advertisement. But the tension didn't vanish with the cameras. Crew members exchanged hushed remarks, knowing they had just captured the kind of unscripted drama that morning television rarely delivers. As technicians reset the stage for the next segment, Michael remained seated, effortlessly composed. He chatted with a sound engineer as if nothing remarkable had occurred, a quiet smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Lorraine, meanwhile, disappeared behind the set, her team gathering like anxious sparrows around her. Outside the studio, news outlets were already drafting headlines. Michael Caine clashes with Lorraine Kelly in live TV showdown. Legendary actor shuts down class tension on air. Entertainment reporters scrambled to secure clips, while fans flooded comment sections with praise for Caine's dignity and restraint. When the show returned from commercial, Lorraine reappeared with a polished smile firmly back in place. "Welcome back," she said, her voice steady but her posture noticeably stiffer. "Before we continue, I just want to thank Sir Michael Caine for sharing his incredible insights today." Michael inclined his head graciously. "Thank you for having me," he said, the warmth in his tone subtly undercutting the earlier chill. The remaining minutes passed in relative calm, but the electricity of the earlier confrontation never fully faded. Each exchange carried a quiet tension, as if both host and guest knew they had already created the day's headline and were simply playing out the clock. As the final credits rolled, Michael rose with unhurried grace, shaking hands with crew members and offering a polite nod to Lorraine. The cameras captured his exit, a man walking away not from conflict, but from a conversation he had already won. Outside the studio doors, reporters waited, microphones at the ready. Michael offered a brief wave, but no further comment, leaving the nation to debate what they had just witnessed. Some called it a masterclass in dignity, others a perfect takedown of class snobbery. Either way, the interview was already etched into the annals of live television legend. By evening, major outlets were looping the footage on repeat. Talk shows dissected every glance, every pause, every carefully chosen word. Viewers replayed the moment Michael delivered his quiet rebuke, marveling at how a man of nearly 90 could command a room and an entire country without ever raising his voice. And somewhere in London, Michael Caine likely enjoyed a quiet cup of tea, content in the knowledge that authenticity had once again proven stronger than any headline. The media storm erupted within hours. By the time evening news programs aired, Michael Caine's confrontation with Lorraine Kelly had become the most talked-about segment of the day. Clips of the tense exchange dominated social media, racking up millions of views before midnight. Headlines blazed across entertainment sites. Sir Michael Caine silences Lorraine Kelly in live TV clash. And authenticity versus elitism. Morning show turns into a masterclass. Commentators flooded radio talk shows and online panels, each eager to dissect every flicker of expression and every calculated pause. Body language experts slowed the footage to frame-by-frame analysis, pointing out the tightening of Lorraine's jaw, the subtle lean of Caine's shoulders, the exact second the power dynamic shifted. "You can see the moment she realizes she's lost control," one analyst insisted. "His stillness is the real statement." Viewers shared their own reactions in a tidal wave of posts. "That was pure class from Caine," wrote one fan. Another added, "Lorraine just learned the hard way, you don't challenge a legend on his own story." Even those who had tuned in only for casual morning entertainment found themselves unexpectedly moved. Comments described Caine's quiet defense of his roots as a speech for the ages, the kind of truth TV desperately needs, and proof that dignity still wins. Morning papers rushed to print late editions featuring the showdown on their front pages. Tabloid photographers camped outside Caine's London home, hoping for a follow-up quote or even a simple wave. Instead, they captured only a fleeting image of the actor stepping into a car, expression serene, offering no fresh soundbite to feed the frenzy. Public figures quickly joined the conversation. Fellow actors praised Caine for standing firm without losing grace. Politicians from working-class backgrounds posted supportive messages, calling his words a reminder of the value of humble beginnings. Even rival talk show hosts couldn't resist weighing in, some teasing Lorraine for underestimating a national treasure, others applauding the unscripted drama for reviving live TV. Meanwhile, ITV executives held emergency meetings to assess the fallout. Ratings for the episode spiked to record highs, but the network braced for questions about whether the host had crossed a line. Behind closed doors, producers debated how to frame the incident. Should they issue a statement defending Lorraine's approach, or quietly let the public's fascination drive viewership without comment? Lorraine herself remained unusually quiet. No tweets, no after-show interviews. Sources whispered that she left the studio quickly after filming, shielded by her team as reporters shouted for a reaction. Insiders described her mood as tense but composed, noting that she seemed determined to downplay the confrontation rather than fuel the fire. By the next morning, every breakfast table conversation in Britain seemed to circle back to the same question. Had Lorraine simply tried to push for a fresh angle, or had she crossed into something more personal, something that revealed an uncomfortable bias against working-class pride? Editorials debated the issue, turning a single interview into a national discussion on class, success, and the right to honor one's roots. Through it all, Michael Caine maintained a dignified silence. Friends told reporters he spent the evening at home with family, enjoying a quiet dinner, and refusing to watch the replay. Michael said everything he needed to say on air, one confidant explained. There's nothing more to add. The contrast between the frenzy outside and the calm within only heightened the legend. In an age of instant reactions and endless social media statements, Caine's choice to let his words stand unamplified spoke louder than any press conference. Television critics hailed the moment as a turning point for live broadcasting. Audiences are starved for authenticity, one reviewer wrote. Michael Caine gave them exactly that, not with shouting or spectacle, but with the power of lived truth. Days later, the buzz showed no sign of fading. Replays of the segment topped streaming charts. Memes flooded the internet, some highlighting Lorraine's uneasy smile, others immortalizing Caine's steady gaze and the now famous line about authenticity. Fan forums filled with personal stories of resilience, inspired by the actor's refusal to let success rewrite his past. Industry insiders speculated that the encounter might even influence future interviews. Guests will walk in with a new sense of agency, one veteran producer admitted. They'll remember that Caine moment and know they can push back calmly, firmly, and without apology. For Michael Caine, the event seemed destined to become yet another defining chapter in a career already packed with cinematic triumphs. He hadn't just promoted a film, he'd sparked a nationwide conversation, and reminded millions that true class isn't about money or status, it's about refusing to forget where you came from. And as Britain continued to debate the meaning of that morning, one truth remained undeniable. A single interview, lasting less than 15 minutes, had managed to shake the polished world of daytime television to its core. Behind closed doors at ITV, the fallout turned into a full-scale crisis meeting. Senior producers, network executives, and public relations staff crowded into a sleek conference room overlooking London's South Bank. Laptops glowed. Phones buzzed. The normally upbeat chatter of morning show planning was replaced by sharp whispers and tense glances. One executive broke the silence first. "The numbers are through the roof," she said, tapping a tablet that displayed skyrocketing viewership graphs. "It's the highest engagement we've had in years." Another quickly countered, "But we can't ignore the backlash." Social feeds are flooded with comments calling Lorraine dismissive and classist. "We need a strategy before tomorrow's broadcast." Producers replayed the clip on a large screen, pausing at key moments. They studied every shift in Lorraine's expression, every measured word from Caine. "Here," one pointed, freezing the frame where Caine uttered, "Authenticity is remembering the woman who raised you." This is where the audience turned. "Look at the camera operator, you can see, even he stops moving." Suggestions flew around the room. Some pushed for a public statement, praising Caine's honesty while reaffirming Lorraine's commitment to lively discussion. Others argued for silence, fearing any comment would ignite new headlines. A senior PR officer finally spoke with a sigh. "The public is with Michael. If we defend Lorraine too strongly, it will look defensive. We need measured grace, acknowledge the passion, highlight the ratings, and pivot to tomorrow's guests." While ITV strategized, Lorraine Kelly retreated to her private dressing room. A small team of trusted colleagues hovered nearby, offering tea and carefully chosen words. According to one insider, she listened to the replay in silence, eyes fixed on the screen. She wasn't angry, the source whispered later. She looked stunned, like someone replaying a conversation in her head, wondering exactly when she lost control. Friends texted encouragement throughout the evening. A veteran presenter sent a message reading, "Tough segment. You'll bounce back. Happens to all of us." Lorraine reportedly replied with a single line. "It just didn't feel like a normal interview." Outside ITV's headquarters, paparazzi gathered, hoping for a reaction. Lorraine slipped out through a side exit, shielded by security, offering only a polite wave to the flash of cameras. She gave no interviews, no late-night tweets. The silence itself became another headline. "Kelly stays mum after Caine clash." Meanwhile, Michael Caine's phone buzzed non-stop. Longtime friends and fellow actors sent messages of admiration. One director texted, "Masterclass. You didn't just win, you educated." Another joked, "Remind me never to underestimate you in a close-up." By the second morning, talk shows across Britain replayed the segment with forensic intensity. Competing networks aired split-screen breakdowns, highlighting the precise second Caine's quiet authority overwhelmed the studio. Call-in programs invited listeners to share their thoughts. A bus driver from Manchester declared, "That man just defended all of us who came from nothing." A retired teacher added, "Lorraine forgot the golden rule, you never belittle someone's roots." Newspapers followed with long editorials about class consciousness in modern Britain. The Guardian praised Caine's measured dignity. The Daily Mail called it a delicious slice of unscripted justice. Even international outlets picked up the story, framing it as a lesson in authenticity that transcended borders. Entertainment agents reported a sudden surge of interest in booking Caine for prime interviews. "Everyone wants a piece of him now," one agent said. "He proved you can dominate a broadcast without a single shout. That's rare. That's power." Within ITV, the ratings spike created its own paradox. Advertisers were thrilled by the massive audience, yet nervous about the controversy. Some quietly requested assurances that future interviews would avoid combative undertones, while others leaned in, eager to sponsor a show suddenly buzzing with cultural relevance. As the week progressed, Lorraine finally addressed the incident on air. With a calm smile and carefully chosen words, she told viewers, "Sir Michael and I had a spirited conversation about life, success, and staying true to your roots. That's what live television is all about, honest moments." She thanked Michael for joining the show and expressed admiration for his career. The statement was short, neutral, and critics noted pointedly free of apology. Michael, for his part, remained characteristically reserved. When approached by reporters outside a London theater premiere 2 nights later, he offered only a warm grin. "It was a good chat," he said. "That's all. No elaboration, no victory lap." just the calm dismissal of a man who had already said everything that mattered. But the public wasn't ready to let go. Fan forums continued buzzing with fresh theories about hidden tension, with some claiming Lorraine's comments reflected deeper issues in television culture. Academics weighed in, citing the exchange in think pieces about class mobility and media bias. Memes kept spreading. Caine's unshakable stare became a viral symbol of quiet defiance. Inside industry circles, the Caine effect became shorthand for any guest who turns an interview upside down with nothing more than poise and lived truth. Producers began rethinking their prep sessions, warning hosts to respect the life stories of veteran guests or risk becoming the next viral cautionary tale. Through it all, Michael Caine carried on with his film promotion schedule, walking red carpets and giving interviews that remained warm, thoughtful, and refreshingly scandal-free. Yet everywhere he went, one question lingered. Would anything ever top the morning he schooled a seasoned host without raising his voice? By week's end, one thing was clear. The clash between a beloved actor and a polished presenter had outgrown its 15 minutes of airtime. It had become a cultural flashpoint, a conversation about respect, roots, and the quiet power of authenticity, proof that sometimes the most explosive television moment is a simple refusal to forget who you are. Late-night comedy shows quickly seized the moment, turning the now famous exchange into a running punchline. On BBC's Mock the Week, a comedian opened with a sly grin. If authenticity were a weapon, Michael Caine just fired the quietest cannon in television history. The audience roared. Across the Atlantic, U.S. hosts joined in. A popular American late-night monologue quipped, Michael Caine didn't just win an interview, he gave a TED Talk on dignity while sipping studio coffee. Clips of the jokes went viral overnight, pulling new international viewers back to the original confrontation. Fan creativity took over social media. Memes flooded Instagram and TikTok. One looped Caine's calm stare with the caption, "Authenticity loading." Another paired Lorraine's strained smile with a spinning hourglass reading, "When you realize the guest owns the show." A trending hashtag, #CaineUnchained, shot to the top of Twitter, uniting everyone from film buffs to casual morning show watchers. Fans began posting their own stories of humble beginnings, tagging them with the same hashtag as a tribute. Pop culture blogs called it the class conversation Britain didn't know it needed. Think pieces appeared in magazines like The New Statesman and Vanity Fair, framing the incident as a symbolic clash between polished television culture and raw lived truth. Sociologists weighed in during radio debates, arguing that Caine's words tapped into a growing public hunger for authenticity in a media landscape obsessed with image. Within ITV, the ratings effect was immediate and dramatic. Advertisers scrambled to secure spots on upcoming broadcasts, hoping to capture the surge of curious viewers. Internal reports showed a spike, not just during the Caine segment, but in the days that followed, as audiences tuned in to see if Lorraine would strike again. Staff members privately referred to the phenomenon as the Caine bump, marveling that a single, unscripted moment could deliver the kind of audience growth entire marketing campaigns often failed to achieve. Lorraine's own public image shifted in complex ways. Some longtime fans defended her as a professional simply doing her job, while others criticized her for what they saw as class insensitivity. Morning call-in shows featured heated debates. She was just challenging him like any journalist would, argued one caller. Another countered, "You don't mock a man's roots on live TV, especially not that man." Polls conducted by entertainment sites revealed a split audience. Respect for Caine's soared, while Lorraine's favorability dipped slightly, though ratings suggested viewers were still tuning in perhaps more than ever. Michael Caine's reputation, already legendary, reached new heights. Invitations poured in from political panels, literary festivals, and global talk shows. He politely declined most of them, choosing instead to focus on his film promotion and a handful of carefully selected appearances. When asked about the incident during a quiet radio interview days later, he responded with the same elegant brevity that had defined the clash. "It wasn't a fight, it was a conversation. I just told the truth." Publishing houses reportedly began bidding wars for a potential memoir focused on his philosophy of resilience. One editor described the proposed book as half autobiography, half masterclass in staying grounded. Even fashion magazines jumped on the trend, praising his understated wardrobe during the interview as the new uniform of quiet power. Weeks later, when Lorraine returned from a brief holiday break, she opened her show with a carefully crafted message. "Television is at its best," she said, "when real stories spark real conversation. That morning with Sir Michael reminded us why live TV matters." She smiled warmly, But keen observers noticed a softer approach. In subsequent interviews, more listening, fewer interruptions, and a visible effort to show respect when guests spoke of their pasts. Industry insiders began referring to this shift as the Caine effect. Producers across networks quietly instructed hosts to avoid the Lorraine misstep, a shorthand warning to respect the personal histories of veteran guests. Training sessions for young presenters even used the segment as a case study in the dangers of underestimating a subject's emotional connection to their own narrative. Meanwhile, fans continued celebrating the moment. Street artists in London created murals depicting Caine's composed profile alongside the word authenticity in bold letters. Charity groups invited him to speak about perseverance and class mobility, seeing his viral defense of humble roots as an inspiration for disadvantaged communities. Michael politely declined most invitations, but he sent personal notes of support, reinforcing the message without turning it into a publicity tour. Months after the broadcast, the clip remained a staple of year-end retrospectives. Critics listed it among the defining television moments of the decade, ranking it alongside historic interviews and unexpected live revelations. Media scholars cited it in academic papers, exploring how quiet resistance can dismantle on-air power structures more effectively than shouting ever could. Through it all, Michael Caine stayed characteristically calm. In a brief appearance at a film festival, he summed up the saga with a wry smile. "I told my story. People listened. That's enough." With those few words, he closed the chapter as gracefully as he had lived it, leaving the world to debate, meme, and admire a moment that proved authenticity needs no script and no second act. Months rolled into a year, yet the shockwaves from that single interview never truly faded. Entertainment writers began referring to it as the morning that changed TV. Universities folded the exchange into media studies courses, showing students how a quiet, unscripted confrontation could rewrite the power balance between interviewer and guest. Lecture halls played the clip on repeat, pausing to analyze Michael Caine's measured delivery and the precise moment Lorraine Kelly lost command of the conversation. At ITV headquarters, the after effects shaped programming far beyond Lorraine's show. Executives quietly commissioned workshops for hosts and producers, emphasizing respect for lived experience as a new gold standard. Internal memos cited the Caine benchmark whenever discussions arose about guest preparation and on-air questioning. One producer joked, "Every time someone pitches a spicy question, management asks, could this turn into another Caine moment?" Lorraine's career continued, but with a noticeable recalibration. While her ratings remained strong, critics detected a softer edge to her interviews. The once sharp interruptions gave way to longer pauses, more open-ended questions, and an air of cautious diplomacy. Industry gossip suggested that her contracts now included clauses granting guests greater control over pre-interview topics, a quiet acknowledgement of lessons learned. Sponsors remained loyal, but marketing strategies subtly shifted. Ad campaigns for Lorraine's program highlighted heartfelt conversations and authentic storytelling, a clear nod to the incident that had both bruised and boosted her brand. Publicists described it as turning the clash into a badge of relevance, though some insiders whispered that Lorraine privately disliked the ongoing comparisons to Michael's poised triumph. Meanwhile, Michael Caine's legacy entered a new cultural phase. Critics who had long celebrated his acting began writing about his philosophy of grounded greatness. Documentary producers developed a two-part special titled Michael Caine, The Power of Truth, weaving his career highlights with the viral interview that reintroduced him to a younger audience. Global invitations poured in from keynote speeches on social mobility to honorary university lectures, but Caine accepted only a few. When asked why he turned down so many lucrative offers, he offered a simple explanation during a rare magazine profile. "My story isn't a brand, it's my life. I won't sell it as a spectacle." The quote itself became a headline, reinforcing the very authenticity that made the original interview unforgettable. Internationally, the ripples spread beyond entertainment. Political commentators cited the exchange during debates on class inequality. Opinion pieces in American and European newspapers argued that Caine's steadfast defense of his roots mirrored wider frustrations with elitism in politics and media. One columnist wrote, "In an age of polished spin, Sir Michael reminded the world that quiet conviction can be revolutionary." A year later, award season ceremonies honored Caine not only for his film work, but also for his unmatched contribution to cultural discourse. When he stepped out on stage to accept a Lifetime Achievement Award, the crowd gave a standing ovation before he spoke a single word. His speech lasted barely 2 minutes. "Thank you for recognizing not just the films, but the life behind them." Where we start matters. It shapes where we go. Never forget that. The audience erupted, many rising again for a second ovation. Clips of the moment went viral, with younger fans calling it Caine's encore to the Lorraine showdown. Lorraine, watching from home, according to tabloids, reportedly offered a quiet toast to the man who had unintentionally reshaped her career. In later interviews, she carefully described the morning as challenging but valuable, admitting, "It reminded me that every guest carries a history that deserves respect." By the second anniversary, the Caine moment had cemented itself as more than a television highlight. It was cited in leadership seminars, journalism ethics workshops, and motivational speeches. Memes still surfaced, but now they shared space with serious discussions about class pride and the responsibility of media figures. And Michael? He continued working, choosing roles that spoke to perseverance and humanity. When asked if he ever rewatched the clip that changed so much, he offered his trademark smile and a single, perfect line, "Why would I? I was there." The cultural echo of that morning stretched even further as the second anniversary passed. Major news outlets revisited the showdown with glossy retrospectives, packaging it as a defining moment in British broadcasting. Streaming services released compilation specials, greatest live TV confrontations, and invariably ranked the Caine-Kelly interview at the very top. Viewers who hadn't even been born when Caine's early films debuted now recognized his calm stare as a meme of timeless authority. Inside ITV, producers still used the event as a training template. New hires were required to watch the full segment and attend a workshop nicknamed the Caine Clinic. The session broke down not just the dialogue, but the subtle choreography of power, the way a measured pause can silence a studio, the impact of eye contact, the strength in refusing to fill a quiet moment with nervous chatter. Trainers told young presenters, "This isn't about winning an argument, it's about never losing yourself on live TV." Lorraine herself experienced a quiet transformation. Her interviews gradually shifted from brisk exchanges to thoughtful conversations, often drawing praise for a new depth of empathy. Viewers noticed the difference. "She listens more now," one longtime fan wrote on social media. "It feels like she's genuinely curious, instead of just pushing for sound bites." Ratings remained strong, but now the show was celebrated for heart rather than just entertainment. Lorraine never publicly credited Caine for the change, but colleagues whispered that she often referenced that morning in private editorial meetings as a reminder to respect every guest's journey. Michael Caine's own influence grew beyond cinema. Universities invited him to speak on resilience and class mobility, though he continued to decline most offers with a polite smile. When he did appear, he focused on storytelling rather than the infamous clash. "It wasn't a fight," he told a packed lecture hall at Oxford. "It was a reminder. Where you come from is not a prop for publicity. It's the foundation of who you are." The audience erupted in applause before he could finish the sentence. Publishers finally convinced him to release a reflective memoir. Titled Staying True, the book explored his childhood in South London, the sacrifices of early acting years, and the quiet conviction that fame should never erase humble origins. Reviewers hailed it as part autobiography, part manifesto, and excerpts dominated newspaper culture sections for weeks. In entertainment circles, the term Caine silence became shorthand for the art of controlled stillness. Directors cited it when coaching actors, and talk show guests quietly practiced it before live appearances. "It's when you let the pause speak louder than any rebuttal," explained one veteran host. Michael perfected it on Lorraine's couch. Celebrity friends continued to recount private moments of admiration. An Oscar-winning colleague shared a dinner anecdote. "Michael just sipped his wine and said, 'Authenticity is easy. You just never lie about who you are.' Then he changed the subject to football. That's his genius, drop wisdom like a pebble and move on." Meanwhile, fan devotion reached new heights. A grassroots campaign proposed naming a South London arts centre after Caine, citing his unwavering pride in his roots. The local council approved the project, unveiling the Michael Caine Centre for Performing Arts with a mural of his iconic interview moment painted across the entrance wall. At the ceremony, Caine delivered a brief, heartfelt speech. "This isn't about me. It's about every kid who thinks their background is a barrier. It isn't." Lorraine was invited to the opening but chose to send a warm recorded message instead, praising Caine as a national treasure and a reminder that every story deserves respect. Observers noted the gesture as a subtle reconciliation, a quiet acknowledgement that the morning, which once rattled her, had also reshaped her show and her approach to broadcasting. By the third anniversary, the Caine effect had become a permanent chapter in British media history. Documentary filmmakers chronicled how a routine promotional interview turned into a masterclass on dignity, authenticity, and the enduring power of lived truth. Television critics placed the moment alongside legendary live events, noting that its impact came not from spectacle, but from restraint. And through it all, Michael Caine remained, exactly as he had been that morning, calm, grounded, and quietly amused by the global conversation he had sparked without ever raising his voice.